Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of My Thoughts. Now I must apologize. I think I said I would be uploading more regularly than I am. It seems like I'm averaging like one video a month. Apologies. I'm actually working on. I'm doing other projects on the side, so bear with me. I'll probably once that those projects are also completed, I will I will create kind of like a tutorial on how I complete that project. But more importantly, I think I'll showcase that project. I was previously I was kind of hoping to finish that project by December. Now it's looking like probably February earliest I'll be done, just because of the fact that it requires me to learn a few other documentations and modules that I haven't used in Python before. And so kind of like learning these new things and then integrating them with your project, it takes quite a fair bit of try and error before you can kind of get the hang of it. But we're back today, and we're going to carry on with the Flask application that we were building. I think we'll go straight into it, to be fair. I think the last time, if you watched part 4 of the video, I believe you would have got to the bit where I would have I will link all the link to all the other videos are in the bio and in the description. But if you have a look here, we got to this bit where essentially when an individual hits the URL of the page, there was the so when they visit the slash URL, as we see here, for example here, it will take them to this function, the home function will be triggered. Once that's triggered, it will then go ahead and write this HTML HTML code message, which I displayed by if we were, for example, to go ahead and change it, save that, and then kind of like relaunch the application. Oh, actually, I need to turn on the virtual machine. Then there's actually a good thing this is happening right here. Make sure you turn on your virtual machine. Make sure you turn it on. It's quite important, and you do need it. One thing you can also do, I think I spoke in my previous video, my very first video, I made a tutorial on how to start a virtual machine. Not virtual machine, sorry, like an EC2 instance in AWS, which will be essentially your virtual server. It allows me to have multiple terminals open. You can also have this within your local machine, so you can have multiple terminals running at the same time, and then you can run it from there. But for the purpose of this video, I will probably be having multiple servers open, just so that I can, if I need to debug certain information, I can do that. So today we're gonna go and create our forms. I think I won't waste too much time kind of diving into it. I will kind of teach things as of when I'm kind of like going along with it. So the first thing, the forms, is essentially when you visit a website, like let's say so this application will allow individuals to enter details about their favorite book, their favorite movie, and if there's a movie and a book which are of the same title, of the same I guess author or director, they'll be able to enter those both at the same time, and then there'll be another page which will display those information. So of course we need a page where the individuals can go ahead and they can enter those necessary information that they want in there, and that's what we're going to do here in the forms. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do certain imports. Now Flask, within Flask there are functions in there, so Flask form, and there's also other stuff which makes it easier depending on what forms you're entering. So we're going to firstly have a form which will allow the individuals to enter the title, a description of what they're trying to post, and also a button, a submit button, which will post that to the database. We're also going to have a registration form where the individuals will be able to register onto the website, essentially. And within that, there would be a first name, a last name, an email address, a password, and then there'll be another confirm password, and then a submission. And then there'll be another form which will kind of require them to validate that email address. And so normally what we can do is you can hard code a function which would check whether someone's email address is actually correct or not. So if you were to hard code it yourself, for example, you can have an if statement saying that if, for example, at is if, for example, you can have a variable. So let's just call it verify. And you can have it. You can have a string where there'll be an at, or you can actually have multiple variables. Where it could be like ending, for example, and it must have you would want it to have, for example, something like at least .co.uk in there, something like that. And then what you can basically do is say if, and you can have something like email address equals, let's just make up what, like an email that, let's just say eman@hotmail.co.uk. You can have something like this, and then you can have so you can have all of this in a function and then have that in a class. That way you can kind of reuse it and do what you like with that. And you can have an if statement just saying if email address, or for example, if you can just say if one of these functions is email address, then you can go ahead and do that. So if you can say if verify ending in email add, and you can say print. This is just for the purpose of just showing you how it works. You can say print it contains it, something like that. But if you were to actually run this within your application, what you would literally do is like if these things verify, then you can say return that email address, and with that email address you can then post that to the database, because then the first way it stops people from essentially just putting random email address that you're not going to do anything with it. I mean, the purpose of actually building an application is so that one, you can have it just so that you can just go around and mess around on the internet fair. You can also do it so that people can actually come and use certain functions of your website. And you can also store the information and learn certain behaviors of what they do on your website. That way you can not only improve your services, but you can tailor your services to specific users, which is really important. But yeah, that's one thing you do. But for this purpose, we're going to use one of the Flask functions in there. So we'll go right ahead and we'll start with the imports that we need to do. So the first import we'll do from Flask. Sorry, I'm looking. If you see me looking up there, my notes I'm looking through. So from Flask WTF, which is one of the things that we've actually installed, I believe within our requirements. Yeah, with WTF forms. So from there, you want to import Flux form. Make sure to spell it correctly. It's quite important. I will do other imports, and so you see it, and you can pause the video. You can then go ahead and you can just copy that down. Yeah, actually, yeah. So that's what so these are the imports that we will have on here. So the first one, Flask form, and then within that we also have imports from string field, submit field, and integer field for the numbers that we'll probably enter as well. And then we will need validators. So we want to validate the length and data required. So some fields that you'll be entering, you want the individual to enter that. If they're integral to the database, you don't want that to be null. It will kind of conflict with your MySQL database, and when that happens, you run into a few errors, and then you have to think about writing code for exceptions, for catching exceptions. But yeah, that's what we have. I think I literally just said some of the forms that we're going to have. So the forms we're actually going to have are our book name, the author's name, the genre, the short content about the book, and then you submit. And of course, we're going to have the class, book movie classes also, which will be a form which will contain a movie name, director name, genre, short content, and then the book ID, because of the fact that it's going to be it's going to be able to, it's going to have a child class with the with the with the movie database. And then we're going to also have another form which will allow the individuals to delete a book, which is quite important for a CRUD application. You need to be able to, the D in CRUD for CRUD, the D bit is for delete. And so first they should be able to search for the book, and once they found the book, they should then be able to delete that book by clicking the submit button, which will be delete. And then as well as being able to allow them to delete it, the U in CRUD is to allow them to update, to make updates to their table. And so the book updates will have the book name, the author's name, the genre, the short content, and within that update, you'll be able to make whatever, I guess, whatever amendments they want to do, given that they've specified the correct book name or they've specified the correct author's name. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to write the code for the first book name. It's going to be in a context of a class. So this is the way you write classes in Python. You begin with a class like that. You have the name of the class. In a situation, we'll call it book form. We'll call the function flask form. And then you would need to use a colon there. And the first one, you start with the name. Normally I just like to go straight underneath it. So you go book underscore book name. And this will be a string. You would want this to be a string. Remember the definition of a string is anything like words written where you would need it in brackets. So this one will just be given then just the normal name of book name as a description name. And of course you want it to have validators, which are essentially so the validators will, the first validator essentially we will put that in a list, and it will call the function data required. So it will just let the individuals know that they need to fill out this particular information that's required for the book. And then of course we're going to set a length that the title of the book needs to have. I think a minimum of 2 characters. I think a minimum of 2 characters for the book, it makes sense, but a maximum of 30. One thing you don't want to do is kind of overload your database. It makes it quite difficult sometimes to read a database when you've got kind of information that extends way too much, especially for something like a book name. You don't necessarily need a long name. I mean, most books or most movies are barely a sentence long. You know, like for example, Transformers, that's just one word. So we'll set, I think, a sensible limit of two minimum characters and maximum of 30. And then of course we're gonna have our authors. What I'll do is I'll actually pause it and read the rest out for you. Yep, so our second form would be the author's name. Once again, that's a string, and the description of that is just the author's name. The validators will be the same as the book name, which is minimum of 2 characters, maximum of 30 characters, and they need to require what they are required to enter that details in. Our third form will also be a string field, and it will be the genre. And once again, I mean, with genres, you can be as creative as you like, but I gave it a maximum of 100 characters. I wouldn't say I'm a movie or book expert, so apart from like crime, thriller, horror, I imagine there's quite a number of complicated genres out there. So I kind of was a little bit liberal and gave the option for about 30 characters maximum. And then of course, this is where it's quite important. Content of whatever book they want to add, or whatever movie they want to add. This will literally just give a description of what the book was. So once someone enters the site and they want to see the list of books on there, there'll be a list of movies. You have to go on that page and you'll be like, okay, cool, makes sense. Here's the book, here's the name of the book, the genre of the book, and then finally a little paragraph. And I've given them a maximum of 1,000 characters. What I actually can do is, once the website, we'll do a tutorial on entering these details, and of course And if, for example, once we're entering the details in, we feel like 1,000 characters is quite a lot, then there will be an option to come back and kind of change it. Of course, it's your site, so you can be quite flexible. I mean, I've kept it here at 1,000. You can do whatever you want. You can go to 2,000, 3,000. I think, but for the purpose of this video, I would kind of follow along, literally code by code of what I'm doing, just in case of you run into any errors. You can track back and just know you're going wrong and rectify it. And so that's our first form, which is a book form. And then we're going to create another form called the movie form. And so once again, that will be in a class. Ideally, I mean, you can just within industry, if you're successful and you're working as a software developer within industry, you possibly, it will be a good idea to have your class in its own kind of Python file. It makes it much easier to manage your files and to manage your applications, because what can happen is if there's an error in your code within the debugging, it will give you context as to where exactly these errors are occurring, which is great. And so having it in different files actually makes it easier. I will keep it, because it's kind of like a beginner's level tutorial. I'm going to keep everything in the same place, just so that we're not moving in between pages too much and it's not confusing individuals. But just bear that in mind, it might be something of an expectation of you once you're within the industry. So the second one will be the book movie app. And the first one, as you remember, creating a class, you have that here, and then we'll call it book movie form, and we'll call that function again flask form, which is required for kind of like Python to recognize that this is supposed to fulfill the function of a form. And once again, we'll have the context of it. First one being movie name, and then field it's normal, and then we'll call that normal movie name, and then comma, and then we'll have our validators. Indentation is sometimes quite important depending on what you're coding. So if you're coding in YAML, for example, which we'll talk about, we'll actually do that when we're writing playbook scripts for Ansible. I think indentation in those ones are quite important. You want to be careful as your code won't run. And so within our validators, we'll have our data structure. So the data that must be required, and then on top of that, we'll have the length of that which will be 2 in this case, and a maximum of 30. I think you may notice that sometimes I do press you will notice that sometimes I do press. Let me just make sure. I think I've made an error here somewhere. Yeah, I have here. Just realized here over there. Yeah, sometimes you'll see me press tab whereby the sentence will complete, which is a great thing with Visual Studio Code. It kind of almost can predict a little bit of where you're going with your code. GitHub has actually released what's known as the GitHub Copilot, I believe. Don't quote me on exactly the name of it. I read about it a couple of months ago. It's supposed to be kind of the new way of coding, whereby you can then give it a sentence and it will give you the code for it. I will actually, what I'll do is I'll research it, learn it properly, and then we'll do a tutorial on that side of it, because I think it will put an interesting spin on what coding actually means and where the future of software development is actually going. It'll be quite interesting. But yeah, so this will be the first form, the movie name. We're going to go ahead and add the remaining book movie names also. Yeah, so we've added the first one, the book movie name. Make sure you're pausing the video, and you're adding you're adding your code just to make sure you're on track also. So yeah, the first one, book movie name, and then we'll have the director's name, string field again. Just a quick description just for our own reference. Data required, the validators as normal. We'll do the genre, short content for the movies as well. This bit is quite important, which I want to point out. The book ID, it's supposed to literally match the child version bit. So remember in our model whereby we had our first table, which is the books, and we had our second table, which was the movies, and how I talked about how we're going to have a relationship between the book database and the book table within our database, and also our movies database, just because of the fact that if there was a book and there was a movie and they correlate, they are of the same, they're based off each other, individuals can actually be allowed to put that up there. So within the forms, you need to recognize that and be anticipating that people are going to do that. So once they enter in there, once they enter those information on your website, on your client side of things, you will be able to actually take these application forward, send that to the database, and it will go to the relevant areas of your database. This is really important because once this application is working, we'll then be able to go ahead and show you DevOps wise what you can do with applications, how you can scale it, how you can use things like AWS, Elastic Beanstalk. We'll probably look at setting up load balancers, and even how we can go forward and create CI/CD pipelines within GitLab, for example. Yeah, we're excited. So follow along. This will be quite a big project to do. And I talked about the book deletion bit. So yeah, make sure you pause and then you get a quick understanding of everything. Let me just make that slightly bigger for you. Here we are. So that's the book movie. Remember the submit button also is quite important. And then this will be the code that we'll be using for the book delete. So once the individuals have searched the book, they can then go ahead and they can click delete, and it will delete the book from the database. It will completely eradicate. You will see once the website is up and running, we'll do a tutorial and you understand exactly what it's deleting. Whether it's just deleting the name of the book, or it's literally deleting the movie as well, if there is a movie based on that book. Same thing with the movie section. You can also we also have an option for individuals to go into the page and delete a movie from there also. And of course, so like when I said CRUD, so the C is for create, the R to read. So there should be a page where individuals can go and read everything on a database. Everything on a database, not everything obviously, but information on a database, select information should be able to be listed on one page. And then U for uniform, which not uniform, sorry, U for update. Taking it back to my call center days when you had to use phonetic spelling, but U for update, and then D for delete. So right now, just based on this alone, what we have here, we've already qualified the R of CRUD, which is to read. Essentially, actually no, we have not entirely covered it because you need to be able to read from the database, or I mean, yeah, you should be able to just read from the website. We may or we may not have covered that side. And then finally, the book update. Yeah, so here it'll be the form for updating certain parts of the book or of the genre. So here, for this tutorial, we're only going to really update just the book. I mean, we can extend it and allow individuals to update the movie genres as well, I guess. We will look at that, but I think for now we'll just focus on just satisfying the qualifying factors for a CRUD application, and this does that. So you have the book name, you have the author's name, the genre, the short content, and then submit. And so all these 3 or 4 forms here, individuals can actually go ahead and change once the book name exists within a database, which we'll write a code which will check to make sure the book name actually exists within the database. But once it exists within a database, they can then have the freedom to change things like the author's name, the genre, and then afterwards submit information, and that will go ahead and make changes to the database. So this is part 5, I believe, of the tutorial. I want to keep this fairly short. I think this video is going to go into about 25 minutes, hopefully less than 30 minutes. But yeah, I want to upload this, and we'll do part 6 where we'll start looking at what the logic of all of these is going to look like, and then we're going to then set up our go into our HTML and start creating the pages that we'll want to see within that. Actually, whilst we're literally here, we might as well go ahead and create the templates that we'll be using. So if you go into the template section, we'll go ahead and we'll create all the pages that we need, we're going to work on. So the first one, let's make sure we are actually in the right directory. So cd into applications, and within applications you will see the directory for templates, cd. That cd meaning change directory, as I mentioned in my previous videos. If we do ls at the moment, we know we only have one HTML page on there, which is the home.html. We're going to go ahead and create all the files that we need. So we need an about HTML, which once they enter that, it will just give them a quick overview of what the website does. And then we'll need a book.html. This will when you're creating like that, don't use commas. It understands that you want to create separate pages. So you want your about HTML, book HTML. We want our layout.html. We want our movie.html. We also want a movie delete.html page. We want a page for posting.html so that people can actually go ahead and read the information that has been posted. And we want our update.html. And update.html is where they'll be able to go in and update the database. If we press enter, what we'll see here, we'll see within here, everything should list exactly that. And then we can push everything to our repository. I think, let's have a look. Yeah, I've got a few things on track, so I'll push all of those on the repository once the project is completed. But I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you found it informative. Like, subscribe, and I hope we'll see you in part 5 or part 6. I believe this is part 5, I believe. So we'll see you in part 6. Thank you very much.